Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are. Welcome to the Vegan World 2026 Moonshot podcast. And today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, which has been an eye opener for me. And it's about animal testing. I mean, I never understood how utterly unnecessary it is until I spoke to our guest, Dr. Aysha Akhtar. Thank you for joining us, Aysha. How are you?
I'm good, Sailesh. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's only after I spoke to you that I realized that the whole idea of animal testing was almost absurd. We might as well be tossing coins, right?
It's something a lot of people don't really think about. So, you can understand why, not from an ethical standpoint point of view, but from a scientific point of view,
Hmm.
people started animal testing because they could do things with animals that they should not do with humans. And I would argue they should not do that with animals either. But they
Right.
could do things with animals to kind of try to understand some basic biology, basic anatomy, things like that. And so, because of that ability,
Hmm.
unfortunately, animal testing ended up becoming the basis for so much of medical research that happens today. And
Hmm.
yet now we know that it's that it's limited what we can learn, and I think most people are starting to acknowledge, or many people are starting to acknowledge, that what we can learn from animal testing has pretty much come to its conclusion, I guess, in a sense
Right.
that um, we have moved beyond what animal testing can tell us, because now
Hmm.
we're looking at the subtle nuances of molecular biology. And in those cases, I mean, in this respect, animal testing is very unreliable in telling us what we're going to see in humans. There's too many differences between species. In animals in laboratories, they artificially create diseases
Hmm.
that these animals don't naturally get. So they're
Hmm.
artificially trying to recreate human diseases in animals in the lab. And when you artificially induce diseases, they're artificial diseases. They're not actual diseases as humans get. So
Hmm.
there's so many reasons why there's been a sort of a growing scientific momentum saying, okay, we need to start moving back to really studying human biology.
Right. Right. So, uh, s- the effectiveness of animal testing you had said was in the 10% range or less. Is that?
Yeah, so there are many ways in which animals are used in experimentation, and most
Hmm.
people think of it as when it applies to drug development. And that's
Right.
actually a small part. It's not the major part of animal testing. But I mean, it's a significant part, but it's not the major use of animals in experimentation. But if you were to look even at that end part, drug
Hmm.
development, currently, it's almost across most countries that I'm aware of, and definitely in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, which oversees drug development, has a policy right now in which it requires all new drug developers to have tested their new drugs or vaccines on at least two different species for
Wow.
safety and effectiveness
Hmm.
before the FDA will determine whether or not they can move on to human clinical trials. So that means pretty much that all drugs and vaccines, with rare exception, get tested on at least two different species. They're done because the FDA and others
Hmm.
think that the animal testing will tell us whether or not these drugs and vaccines are going to be safe and effective in humans. That's
Hmm.
why they're done. The problem with that is that 90 to 95% of the drugs and vaccines that pass the animal test end up failing when tried in humans.
Hmm.
And most of them fail because they are ineffective or unsafe in humans.
Right.
So the whole idea behind using animals in, especially in drug development in this regards, is completely faulty at this point, because we know animal testing does not predict the safety and effectiveness of drugs reliably enough to continue using them for drug development. So
Right.
that really needs to be changed.
So if it doesn't really predict what we are looking for, are there better ways of predicting what we are looking for?
Yeah, there's so many there. I can tell you how excited I am because there's been some developments and innovation that's been coming out of the past 10, 15 years
Hmm.
that we never had before. And
Hmm.
it's coming out because scientists, individual scientists, those who are more forward thinking, saying, okay, we need better methods of testing, methods that are based on human biology. So
Hmm.
now there are what's called organ on a chip technology, in which you can distill a significant component of a human organ onto a microchip. You can actually connect these different organs on a chip and have the human body on a chip. There's 3D printing of three-dimensional human tissues and miniature organs. There's what's called virtual humans. There's smart artificial intelligence. All of these different types of testing methods are just some of the newest developments that have come about recently, and they're really changing the discussion about medical research. I mean, I can tell you that more and more people, more and more scientists, more and more institutions
Hmm.
are moving into this direction because they realize that this is the future of biomedical research, not animal testing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if we have a better ways of testing for what we are looking for, uh, then we are only doing animal testing because it has been done before. It's like following a convention that we've always done, right? It's even though it's become completely useless.
Yep. And so, it's what, and again, animal testing was done because that's what scientists knew how to use,
Mhm.
and that's what we
Right.
had in the very beginning of time, when you think about
Mhm.
it, and when animal testing really took off. But yeah, we have, you think about it, right? You think about right now, we can how much we can do with just a cell phone,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
We In so many other areas in technology, we've moved well beyond what we initially had. We don't use what we had 100 years ago or
Right.
200 years ago. We've moved
Right.
beyond that. But when it comes to medical research, too much of the community still clings to something that's been around and that we used 200 years ago. We need to
Right.
move beyond that. There are technologies now, there's research methods now that
Right.
can really help us understand human diseases, find the treatments we need, and do them in a much kinder way without using animals.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that technology analogy. It's like saying, to test a cell phone, you have to first have cups and string in between or something like that first.
It's like we're still clinging to the horse and buggy of
Right.
medical research, which is animal testing, and
Yeah.
the reason why. Part of the reason why there's been such a clinging to that is because there's been a lot of effort on the part of several large, well-funded organizations to promote the use of animals in research and to prevent any kind of policy change, any kind of regulatory change that would reduce animal testing, that would um, provide more oversight for
Hmm.
animals used in experimentation, or that would alter the funding, governmental funding, that would possibly shift funding away from animal testing and towards more of these more innovative human biology based methods. So it's that's one of the things that we are always up against. But honestly, their writing is on the wall, and they know it.
Right.
They know it. There's We haven't reached that tipping point yet within the scientific community, and I suspect it's going to happen within the next years. But we are getting to that tipping point when
Right.
the the a large majority, or at least a majority, of scientists will be using human biology based testing methods instead of animal testing.
Yeah, it would make sense for scientists because they don't want to waste their time. Why would they do things that they know is ineffective?
Exactly. So, well, many of them will still argue that animal testing is effective, and unfortunately, they don't really stand back and think critically at the
Mm,
at the issue. And so, they remain in their silos, and they built their careers. They publish their papers. It's what they do. It's what they know, and they're very reluctant to move away from that.
mm,
So, at the Center for Contemporary Sciences, one of the things we really are working on is helping to foster the next generation of scientists.
mm,
So, to create educational programs, reach out to students who want to pursue their degrees in the biomedical scientists. So, these are our future scientists,
mhm.
our future researchers, because they're going to be more open minded. They have not
Right,
based their life on using animal testing. They're not at that point yet.
right.
And we can train them about and teach them about these new amazing testing methods. And
Mm,
this is just what we have now. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? What new breakthrough is going to be developed? But so at the Center for Contemporary Sciences, we did a pilot study
mhm,
of biomedical students, and we wanted to ask them how interested are they in learning
mhm,
about human biology based testing methods. And of course, I mean, overwhelmingly, they wanted to learn about these testing methods.
right.
And they gave different reasons for why. One of the three top reasons for why they wanted to learn about these new methods was A, because of a concern about animal suffering,
Mhm,
B, because they felt that these new methods are more human relevant, and C, because they felt that these human biology based methods are the future of medical research.
right.
But then half of them said that either their universities did not offer such training in those areas, or they didn't know if their universities even offered such training in those areas. So personally, I've heard from so many people who are trying to pursue their degrees in biomedical sciences who've reached out to me saying, I really want to be a researcher. I want to be a scientist, but they're
Mhm,
telling me I have to do animal experimentation. And that still, unfortunately, is still entrenched within the university system. So
mm,
we really need to change the educational system and reach out to students to give them an alternative, which I guarantee students are going to much more want to use these other types of testing methods, learn about these other types of testing methods than do animal testing. I mean, think about it. If you were, a budding scientist and you were offered two types of methods to train in, one, you can poison or bash the head of, or infect or cause a crippling disease in an animal, or two, you can use the body on a chip technique or virtual humans or
mhm.
smart AI. What do you think you're more likely going to choose? And we know that students are going to be much more likely to choose the latter, the human biology based testing methods.
Right, right. Yeah, so I'm sure there are universities that are in the forefront of making this transformation happen, and there are laggards, obviously.
Yeah,
So, who are the universities that are in the forefront of this transformation?
there. So there's pockets within universities
Mm,
that have programs on like organ on a chip technology, for example. But the problem is that they're not seeded into the full university educational curriculum.
mm,
So, and that's what we need, because
right,
students, unless they're exposed to this through their normal routine educational track, they're not as well aware about these other testing methods. Some
mhm,
students may know about some of these centers within universities, but it's not something they really, that they really get taught. What they know is that they have to take this many credits. Here's the
right,
courses offered to get your degree.
right,
And if those courses are only about animal testing or mostly about animal testing, that's what they'll train in.
right,
But if those courses are more and more about human relevant testing methods, then that's what they're going to come out knowing how to do. So I would say, quite honestly, that there's really no university that I'm aware of
Hmm.
that is a major game changer as far as really affecting, and teaching students in the way that it should be done, meaning that these programs shouldn't be elective programs. They should be incorporated into the educational track that's offered by the universities, into the
Right.
credit track that's offered by universities.
Right. That's, well, in a way, that's surprising that there isn't a university that's at the forefront of this. But there are pockets within universities that are moving in the right direction, as you said, right?
Right. There are pockets within the universities of
Right.
centers that will take interns, will take students rotating through their lab. But
Hmm.
again, that's not part of the. It's more of something kind of separated in some ways from the educational track that most students have to follow.
Right.
So if we want to, so this is something we want to do at CCS, is to work with universities to incorporate curriculum into their career tracks, into their PhD programs for students. So it is part, so if I'm opening up the catalog, I'm a
Hmm.
student and I'm at, let's say I'm at, Wake Forest University or University of North Carolina, and I'm going to get my first I'll get my undergraduate in the biological sciences and move into the master's program. I will, when I open up the catalog for the classes offered to me, I will see the classes
Hmm.
that are about human relevant testing methods, and I'll choose those classes. And those
Right.
classes will go towards my credit that I need to complete to get that degree. So
Right.
that's really what's really needed more than anything else in this
Absolutely.
area. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, we are here today to talk to you because you had a major breakthrough in your field recently. So, tell us about that.
Right. So it's there's so recently the European Parliament in an amazing historic vote voted, I think it was 667 to 4,
Hmm.
to phase out animal testing. Now, this parliamentary vote came as a result of a citizens petition in Europe.
Hmm.
And so my understanding is that they had to collect 1 million signatures.
Hmm.
And when they do that, then the European Parliament has to, I think maybe on any topic, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in this regard, once they collected 1 million signatures, then the European Parliament has to um, make a decision, and
Hmm.
has to basically have some meetings, discuss the citizens petition, and respond to the citizens petition. So it was this collective group basically that got more than a million signatures, and
Hmm.
that led to the European meeting and then the European vote. Now, it's I think there are going to be many groups that are going to try to take credit for this, but honestly, it
Right.
was a collective, a
Hmm.
very much a collective process. Many institutions and individuals were part of this entire process. Um, and so the European parliamentary decision, what that means is that they said, we vote in favor of phasing out animal testing. Now, it's not legally binding,
Hmm.
but what that means is that they're calling on the European Commission, to respond with a plan to phase out animal testing, a plan to put more funding towards the development of more human relevant testing methods and some other things. Now, the European Commission has to respond, and that
Hmm.
usually occurs within 3 months. Regardless of anything else, this was a major vote, right? A
Right.
huge vote. I mean, it was overwhelming, and it really sends a strong worldwide message to that the Parliament of Europe. I mean, think about this. Pretty much almost the entire Parliament of Europe was
Hmm.
in favor of phasing out animal testing. I actually would never have expected something like that to occur anytime soon. And so I'm astounded at that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you told me the vote was 667 to 4, I was jaw dropping. Right? That
It's
it was.
amazing. Yeah,
Right. I
right.
mean, which means that when we keep talking sense, eventually it gets through. So,
It does, and I think that's why, honestly, as I say, the writing's on the wall for animal testing, at least in many parts of the world.
hmm,
So in Europe, and I think it's going to be. I say it's going to be on the writings on the wall in the U.S. as well.
hmm,
What we're doing here in the U.S., what the Center for Contemporary Sciences is, we've been the lead scientific organization working on a new bill that
hmm,
will, it's not to the degree that the European Parliament vote is, but it will help move the US in the right direction. And it's
hmm,
called the FDA Modernization Act of 2021. It's been
hmm,
introduced into the House, and we're working on having it introduced into the Senate. And basically, what the bill does is it goes back to some original language that authorized the Food and Drug Development to oversee drug development, and it changes one word. It changes animal to non-clinical. So
hmm.
what that does is that it authorizes the FDA to allow drug sponsors, drug developers, to use testing methods that have been developed recently, like human organs on a chip,
Right.
to use. So it expands the types of testing methods that can be used. It does not take away animal testing, because if we try to do that right now, it will never go through. But
Hmm.
it allows for other types of testing methods to be used in place of animal testing. Um,
Yeah.
so it's in a sense, it might seem like such a small baby step, right? But it's a crucial step. If we try to go any further, it will not succeed. So this is the stuff we have to take now. But it's a crucial step, because once that bill, if this bill passes,
Hmm.
and once that door is opened for allowing other types of testing methods, I guarantee more and more drug companies will start using these other types of testing methods. Because think of it, if you're a drug company, you know that 90-95% of the drugs you try to produce are going to fail,
Right.
even after doing animal testing. You're going to want testing methods that are much more predictive, much more effective. There's a because for your own business model, it's costly
Right.
to try to produce one drug. And when you have such a
Right.
high failure rate based on large part on animal testing, you're going to look for different ways to do testing. So this bill can really open the doors for a change, and then that will galvanize more and more of the community to move in this direction as well, to replace animal testing with more effective, more human relevant testing methods.
Right. So just changing animal testing to non-clinical testing
Yep.
would do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But do you think that the European Union vote would influence Congress now?
Congress, that's what we're hoping.
Right.
So it won't influence the FDA,
Hmm.
and but it might very well influence Congress, because if Congress is seeing another country taking a leadership role in
Right.
this direction, they might say, okay, we need to take over and be the leaders in this area. And what's going to really inspire Congress more than anything else is that if they want to be the leaders in biotech, if they want to be the leaders in medical science,
Hmm.
they're going to have to show that they are leaders in promoting more cutting edge, more innovative, more relevant testing methods. And so, in that respect, I think the European parliamentary vote may very well influence Congress.
Yeah, clearly, then European scientists have an advantage over American scientists if they don't have to do animal testing. Right.
European scientists and so many industries
Hmm.
in Europe
Right.
will embrace that change. And there are more and more industries in the US that are moving towards using more and more human relevant testing methods. And so if 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 we get this FDA modernization bill passed, it will be the first step in really spurring even more innovation in the US.
Hmm.
And so again, it will help us to stay the leader in the medical sciences. That it wants to be the leader in medical sciences, but it's going to fall behind very quickly unless it starts pushing towards the phasing out of animal testing. And the FDA Modernization Act is one step to get there.
Right, right. Yeah. Because I have a good friend who's a professor in biomedical sciences at a
Mm-hmm.
university, and she was telling me, and she's vegan, and she was telling me, I'm forced to do these testings on animals,
Yeah.
and she hates it. She doesn't want to do it, but she's forced to do it. Otherwise, she doesn't get FDA approval for anything that she does.
Yeah, and that's something that I've heard from speaking with academics
Mm.
because so a lot of research is not done for drug development. Most animal testing isn't done for drug development. Most animal testing is actually done under the category of basic research. And
Right.
here, there is no there's no legal requirement for anyone to be using animals.
Hmm.
And so researchers do it because they decide to use animals, right? There's no FDA saying you have to do animal testing at the basic stage because no one regulates this type of basic research.
Right.
But for many scientists and centers that are trying to move more into using these human-based testing methods as opposed to animal testing, what I've been hearing from them is that when they apply for funding,
Hmm.
governmental funding, and here we're really talking about the National Institutes of Health,
Right.
when these institutions apply for governmental funding from the NIH, they get kickback. And what they're
Hmm.
being told is, why aren't you doing animal testing?
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure by institutions like the National Institutes of Health for even the basic researchers to
Hmm.
be using animal testing because that's what they're more likely going to fund.
Why is the NIH so invested in animal testing? Or
There's a culture within NIH.
okay.
It is. There's been a culture within NIH that goes back for a long time. NIH is kind of, it's a bit of a snob, actually. No one should be telling them what to do,
Hmm.
in their opinion, and that it's made up of largely of a lot of researchers who use animals, who conduct animal testing. And a
Hmm.
lot of people don't know this about Fauci. He runs a non-human primate lab.
Hmm.
And so a lot the people who are there, whether they're in as a research position or whether they're in a leadership position, I can't tell you exactly what the percentage is, but a lot of them have built their careers using animal testing. And
Hmm.
so it's a reluctance on their part to move away from that. And so they're going to prioritize animal testing. And unfortunately, that continues the same cycle again and again, as opposed to moving away from animal testing. Now, there are pockets within NIH and individuals within NIH who are much more forward thinking,
Hmm.
but they are not the entire NIH. And so, as an institution, NIH needs to change its priorities and start funding more testing methods that are based on human biology. And this is something that the public can have a strong say in because NIH gets this funding from our tax dollars.
Right.
So you think that it's our tax dollars that are going towards these types of animal testing that you hear about in academic centers, you hear about at the National Institutes of Health.
Right.
We can put pressure as citizens and say, I don't want my money going towards this type of testing method. I don't want it to go towards animal experimentation. I want it to go towards testing methods based on human biology, which is kinder and which is more likely to improve human health.
Right. Well, I mean, we are sort of, at the crossroads between social justice and animal rights. It's almost, I would say that NIH is part of the establishment that is maintaining colonialism, maintaining racism. I mean, I don't know. It seems to be institutionalized everywhere.
NIH has undergone some A few years ago, and I think for quite a while, NIH was one of the governmental agencies that had the highest number of, or the highest percentage of unsatisfied employees.
I see. Okay.
It's very competitive. It gets nasty from the culture, can get very nasty there. I mean, we're going off topic, but there's
Right.
a lot of problems with a lot of these institutions where you have career scientists or career governmental officials who want to keep things the
Right.
status quo,
Hmm.
and very competitive, and that's part of the whole problem. And of course, I think, um, don't quote me on this one either, but I think that there's also been some complaints about women lacking
Hmm.
leadership positions, and of course,
Hmm.
non-Caucasians lacking leadership positions.
Right. No, no, those have to be exposed.
Yeah,
Otherwise we won't talk about it.
yeah,
And because we know it's institutionalized, and institutions, they can continue doing what they're doing if we don't shine the light on it. It's important that we do.
absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, so with this, what is the next step beyond getting the FDA Modernization Act going? Is it getting universities to start having courses in um,
Yeah.
human test? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of things that we can work on, and so a couple of
Mm.
things that we at the Center for Contemporary Sciences are working on. One is, as we mentioned, the FDA Modernization Act, and for anyone who wants to learn more about it, please, we're going to be setting up a page about it, and so you can learn more about it. So please stay tuned for that. The other is our educational program. We're going to start with creating online courses
Good.
for folks to learn about. But in concert, we're going to be trying to work with reaching out to universities to help them, try to work with them to incorporate training programs into their educational track. And third, we are working with a lot of industry partners to help them move away from animal testing. So these are like the chemical industrial world.
Hmm.
And fourth, we are working on some large partnerships, some scientific partnerships, and then also on partnerships that will help drive more investment into the companies that are creating these non-animal testing methods. So that all of that is, part of sort of our ecosystem that we're working on and trying to create to really push the agenda forward, to really galvanize. And I talked about that momentum that's starting, but to
Hmm.
help that momentum get even further and faster. And I think, and this is our goal, is to end all animal testing in the United States in 30 years. And I actually believe that's achievable. And
Hmm.
so, if anyone wants to learn more, please come to our website, the contemporarysciences.org. So it's www.contemporarysciences.org. And that's plural, sciences. And we welcome your support to helping us get these programs not only off the ground, but really to flourish and to help change the way biomedical science is conducted. That is not only better for animals, but better for humans. And that's
Yeah.
the other part of what's really important in this dialogue, is that we need better methods for human health, for our sake. You know, my dad has suffered from tremendous neurological problems as a
Hmm.
result of his diabetes, and there isn't much that I can offer him, unfortunately. When I was deputy director of the Army's traumatic brain injury program, head injuries is a major problem for soldiers, but we don't
Right.
really have anything treatment wise to offer to soldiers. We have things to help alleviate some of the symptoms that result from head injury, but we have
Right.
no treatment for the head injury itself,
Hmm.
despite the fact that hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide has been devoted towards creating head injuries in animals in
Oh,
laboratories.
wow.
Yeah. We don't have anything for spinal cord injury. We don't have anything really for Alzheimer's disease. What the few medications that have been approved are pretty pathetic. Let's put it that way. We don't really have we don't have any treatment for Parkinson's disease. Again, we
Mm.
have some treatments for some of the symptoms, but not for the disease itself. And I can go down again and again and again in this list and expand the list to almost every disease. In fact, we have no treatment for most of the diseases that humans experience. And
Right.
so, even for our benefit, we have to change. We have to pivot away from this old fashioned, archaic, horse and buggy way of doing medical research. We need to move into the new. And that's what we're trying at CCS to really help create that ecosystem among funders, among governmental agencies, individual companies, industries, academic centers, nonprofit organizations to really change that ecosystem to really help basically modernize medical science.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Modernized medical science.
Yeah.
But a lot of the diseases that you mentioned, also there is a nutritional way of overcoming some of them, right? So you can change your diet and possibly address the root cause of those problems.
Right. For many of
Yeah.
the chronic diseases, no doubt
Right.
about it. You know, we know
Right.
about heart disease, strokes, diabetes. Yes, they can be so largely prevented through
Right.
diet, and that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But I will say, not everything can be prevented, and so or
Right.
we don't know how to prevent everything. So we need to also have treatments for what we cannot prevent. And
Right.
unfortunately, um, Americans aren't. Unfortunately, Americans aren't really interested in, as a whole, in learning how to prevent so many diseases. And where a culture is all about drugs, give me the next drug that will provide a fix, quick fix. And so our job is on that side of the equation is to for those drugs that
Mm.
are created, we want to help create them in a way that is kind, in a
Mm.
way that is humane, and in a way that um, improves their safety and improves their likelihood of actually working in humans.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's very important work, and I'm convinced that it's going to happen sooner than 30 years. So, because
We're
we
going to do our best to make that happen. If I could do it in the next 2 years, I would. But we're going to make it happen as fast as we can.
right, yeah, it's one of those things, I'm reminded of uh, a movie where someone, he's talking about a dam. You punch holes in the dam, and eventually the water does its thing. Right? Nature does its thing, right? So I see the what happened in the European Union as punching a hole in the dam, a
it's
big hole.
It is a big hole. It's amazing. But yes, you're right. There are many other little holes being punched as well. And there's a
Right.
great metaphor for this, or a great analogy. And that is happening. And I will say that in animal testing, I feel a kind of a hope. I've been working on this issue for 30 years, and I feel a hope
Mm.
today that I haven't felt before. And so it's going to happen. This is one industry that we can end and talk
Mm.
about animal testing and replace with something far better, far superior.
Yeah. That's on that note. I mean, that is what we are doing to every aspect of this civilization, which is,
Exactly.
yeah, we can end speciesism forever and replace it with something much better. Right? We can end sexism forever and replace it with something much better. Yes, every one of those social injustice issues, yeah, we can do much better. Definitely.
We just have to be open to reevaluating how we've done things.
Right.
And in many areas, we're starting to learn that how we've done things isn't the best way to do things. We need to change. We need to move forward. We need to embrace new ideas, new ways of doing things, and as you said, embrace ideas that incorporate justice
Mm.
for everyone.
Right. So thank you so much, Dr. Akhtar, Aisha. It's a pleasure always to speak with you. And thank you for continuing your work and best luck. Best of
Thank
luck.
you so much, Salesh. I always love speaking with you as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye.